From the Business Civic Leadership Center of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in Washington, D.C., we're here at the Adding Value to Emerging Markets Conference. Gordon Feller from Cisco has the coolest title ever. So Gordon, just what is your title?
Well, the title is Director of Urban Innovations, which really means I get to work with innovators in government, in business, and in the independent sector and the NGO community to get them at the table together, looking at the problems of urban communities in new ways.
That's a huge job then, because there are what seem to be insurmountable problems in urban areas around the world.
Well, and our approach is to look at what are the assets that are available now, keeping apart from the discussion the new things that we might want to inject into those communities, new capital, new technology, but take a look at the existing assets that are on the ground, the wireless networks, the wired networks, the human capital, the resources of the private sector and the public sector, and let's figure out what can we do to turn those into engines for economic development, engines for prosperity that will make those cities more sustainable.
Cisco is a global company, so you work in, I guess, in all continents.
160 countries, I think, we're selling products and services. So we almost have offices in all those places, but our projects around urban innovation have focused in emerging economies as well as in the developed economies. So we're trying to figure out not just in the rich cities and the poor cities, but also in the cities that are fast growing and the cities like North American that are not so fast growing.
Right now there's a bit of, if you will, so a lot of negative feelings, for lack of a better word, around the world about lots of things. But you see some promise from Cisco's, from what you've seen in some of the emerging markets.
Well, there are a tremendous number of what we think are promising signs of positive change. One of them is the way that local communities and the residents in urban communities have harnessed the technology that's available on their smartphones and even their dumb phones to do things like banking, like connecting buyers and sellers, like engaging in the public decision-making process, so that internet access through the smartphone or through the tablet or through the personal computer or the kiosk that's often available in a city government building, those kinds of channels enable transactions to take place, some of them non-commercial, that really are positive developments in the life of those cities, and we want to do whatever we can to enhance those, to make them more visible, to make them more accessible to people who normally are not included.
Okay, let's get specific then. Let's go to an urban area in Africa, let's say. What is it that Cisco is doing to help the sustainability aspect of their communities?
Well, an example would be in a greenfield environment, that is a new neighborhood that's being built in a city which is fast growing, whether it's in Africa or Asia or wherever it might be. We're trying to help the developers who are building those new urban communities, some of them quite large, in fact, with tens of thousands of people who are residents and others who are going to be working there. We're trying to help them figure out how to build the highest impact and lowest cost network that will allow that city to connect its transit system to its energy system to its communication system, so that you can get fantastic economies of scale, and at the same time you can reduce traffic congestion and increase energy efficiency. Those are things that cities want to accomplish, and what we've discovered through pilot projects that we're doing on lots of continents is we're discovering that the network provides the platform for those kinds of innovations to be plugged in and used by the city to achieve its goals. Some of the goals are environmental sustainability goals, some of them are economic well-being goals, some of them are social development goals, but we have found through these pilot projects that we've done that whatever kind of city you're in, the network, wired or wireless infrastructure that's already in place can be used to get you to your finish line faster.
If I am a small developer, let's say I'm an individual developer in a large city in Africa, and I think I've got something that Cisco is interested in. Do they just contact you? Do they contact their local government? How does it all come together to create this sustainability, this long-term employment, long-term business opportunity?
Well, I'll give you one example because I was on the phone with them this morning, and this is a development project in Asia. So it's at in the area close to Incheon Airport, which is the airport that serves Seoul. And it's a new community. I think by the time it's finished in 10 years or so, there'll be 60,000 residents. But the idea was that the developer, who's a large for-profit urban development company, joined forces with a large industrial organization who had a lot of capital. This one was steel company, the largest steel company in Korea, POSCO. And the two came to the city government of Incheon and said, let's plan a development. There's growth in this area. You want to attract new investors. You want to attract young people to live, work, play, and learn in this community. We should figure out a way to reduce the need to compute, because you want people to be able to live, work, play, and learn in the same place and not commute into the big city and fight traffic. And so we help design and develop an architecture that allows every one of the buildings to be connected to the grid, every one of the people to be connected to their workplace, to their children's school, to their clinic, to their government office service provider. So we're figuring out what a smart and connected community looks like, but the greenfield is not the only place where we can do it. So in Amsterdam, which is not exactly a new city, unlike the one in Korea, which is called Sangdo, Amsterdam, very established, very old city, trying to modify and improve the services they can deliver to their residents, built out CityNet as a broadband system that allowed the city to connect all the various services, transit services, energy services, monitoring the water system, monitoring the buildings, monitoring the commercial activity of the city, and it's been a real boost for Amsterdam's economic development. So you have both old cities and new cities attempting to try to re-architect and re-engineer the way that they move not just zeros and ones or data packets, but how they move commerce and communication more efficiently in the city.
So what I'm hearing then is, is that to a certain extent, the challenges in emerging markets, emerging cities, are very similar to the challenges that older cities or more developed cities are having in terms of modernizing.
Well, absolutely, because I think the reality for any city is that they're always trying to attract new investors, create new jobs, build the capacity for growth without overstretching their resource limits. And this is not easy for a brownfield environment of an established older city or the greenfield environment of a brand new one. The challenge is the same. How are we going to create jobs? How are we going to retain the talent that we want to attract? How are we going to bring the investors who want to hire those people to create those jobs? And then the services surrounding that environment, water services, power services, transit services, financial services, that facilitates the constant flow of dollars and people and goods. If you can do that, you're always reinventing the city, and you don't have this challenge that we're facing in North America, which is cities in decline.
You've used the term brownfield and greenfield a couple of times. For those who are unfamiliar with those terms, what do they mean?
Well, it's a fancy way of saying old city and new city. So a brownfield city, for instance, Pittsburgh, when the steel plants basically declined to the point of no longer being in Pittsburgh itself, the city faced the reality of using those old industrial properties, those brownfield sites, in new ways. And Pittsburgh was successful. And they were successful because they brought all the key stakeholders together: Carnegie Mellon, University of Pittsburgh, the city government, the state government, the county government, the various private investors who still were there after U.S. Steel left. And those are the kinds of partners that came together around a brownfield. They're the same partners who will come together around a greenfield project. And so what we're saying is that they are slightly different challenges, but there's always got to be a reinvention process happening. If it's an old city or a new city, you're always reinventing the city.
Right here at this conference, the Business Civic Leadership Center is announcing their Business for Good map and some other tools that are geared to help companies and municipalities and all areas, especially in emerging markets. Do tools like that help Cisco in some of the work that you're doing?
Well, we have found more often than not that if you don't have a tool that's attached to a decision that helps you monitor and measure the activity which a tool should help you do, you're not going to get a clean decision. You're not going to get a decision that moves you forward. So in Silicon Valley, where we're based, if you can't measure it, it's not real. And If you can't measure it, you can't monitor it. And if you can't monitor it, then your ability to change the thing that you're talking about changing is pretty minimal. So our judgment is tools are critical precisely because we need to empower the decision maker with real data, and that has to be real-time data. It can't be data like your utility bill, which is 30 to 60 days old. It's got to be, I'm using energy in my home now, and I want to change my behavior to reduce my energy consumption, but I need to know what my real-time energy use is. So that kind of data for a company to sort out what its philanthropic priorities are or what its corporate social responsibility activities should be, absolutely vital.
The picture of the woman behind you that Rainmakers talks about an awful lot. How does Cisco help her?
In a city, let's take in Mumbai, the largest community in Mumbai is a slum, which is an informal settlement, which means basically the government considers it to be an illegal location. Nobody owns that property, or the city might claim it owns it, or a private owner of property might claim they own it, but the reality is there are hundreds of thousands of people living in Dharavi who are raising their children, going about their business, cleaning their clothes, cleaning their bodies, getting ready for work in the morning, and many of the people who make the city function, who are in the lower economic strata of Mumbai, those are the people who live in Dharavi. And we're asking ourselves, in addition to providing the technology to the cellular and mobile phone providers who are providing this valuable information and communications technology to the user who's got a handheld device, and who now has the ability to connect with employers, connect with government services, connect with their banking, that's a valuable service. But we want to build on top of that network a whole range of additional services that will allow her or him in Dharavi to find a new job, to get better service from their bank, to demand better services from the government, to find out the facts of their life so that it empowers them to be more engaged in deciding what the future of their community in Dharavi will be. So you'll see in many of these communities, the government is not providing a map that tells you where he or she may live and what street and what kind of home and how long they've been there, but those maps are being made by people who are now using their smartphone to locate themselves and to essentially become visible in a society that generally would prefer they be invisible.
Interesting. Last question. You talked about metrics and the need to be able to measure. It's 10 years down the road. You're looking back as now the Senior Director of Urban Innovation. How'd you do?
We're measuring ourselves every month now to figure out, are we meeting our goals, which are goals that we've set for ourselves in programs that we're trying to accelerate on the ground. And you know, we're frustrated because on the one side, the technology is very developed, and the advanced technology allows for pretty miraculous things to take place almost instantaneously. But on the other hand, we've got the political reality on the ground, which often is a blockage in the system to getting smart decisions that will impact the lives of ordinary people positively. So we're technology company able to roll out with our partners, the local service providers and others, the kinds of technologies that will enable and empower urban dwellers to become better at what they want to do, connect with their doctors, connect with their schools, connect with each other. Amazing things can happen. But at a certain point in the process, there has to be a political leader who's ready to stick his or her neck out, maybe with the risk of getting chopped off, but ready to take that political capital that got them into office and use it for this particular end, which is to connect people to the technology and to the infrastructure that supports that technology in a way that's going to give them a greater voice and give them greater economic opportunity and give them a chance to reduce their carbon footprint and increase their energy efficiency. All those good goals. Sometimes what we find is that the governance process is missing. So we're pushing now public-private partnerships with people involved as a way of trying to rebalance the equation. But I would say that 10 years from now, if we stay on the flight path that we're on, we're going to see some amazing things, and not just because of what we're doing, but our partners here at the BCLC, at the U.S. Chamber, others in the corporate world that we're working with. We think that we're going to be seeing some pretty amazing things in the next few years, so hold on to your hat.
Gordon Feller, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.